I didn't pack in a rush. That's the part I remember most clearly, not the yelling, not the words themselves, but the way my hands moved slowly, almost politely, as if I were a guest overstaying my welcome, rather than a daughter leaving her own home. My sister's voice had cracked on ruined. My mother didn't raise hers at all. She said it the way people say a conclusion they've reached long ago, one they think the other person has finally earned the right to hear. I nodded once. I don't know why. Habit, maybe, or the instinct to signal that I'd understood my role. I left my key on the counter. I wiped a ring of water from the sink. I put my shoes on carefully so they wouldn't thud. No one followed me to the door. That felt intentional. Outside, the air was cool and ordinary. Cars passed. Someone laughed down the block. Nothing in the world reacted to what had just happened, and that steadiness felt almost instructional, like a reminder that drama was optional. I didn't go far. A friend had offered her couch weeks earlier, back when things were tense but workable. I hadn't taken her up on it then. I told myself it wasn't that bad. I told myself families go through phases. I told myself a lot of things that night, too, but they didn't sound convincing anymore. The first few days were smaller than I expected, not sad exactly, reduced, fewer words spoken, fewer explanations required. I slept oddly well, then woke up disoriented, like I'd forgotten an obligation and was waiting for the penalty to arrive. It didn't. Not immediately. I kept my phone on. I didn't block anyone. I wasn't trying to make a point. I just didn't reach out either. That felt important, though I couldn't have explained why without sounding defensive, so I didn't try. I went to work. I ate simple food. I noticed how much of my energy had been spent bracing, anticipating comments, pre-editing sentences, rehearsing apologies that were never specific enough to be accepted anyway. Once, in the shower, I caught myself smiling at nothing in particular. It startled me. I turned the water colder, like I'd done something wrong. The missed calls came on a Thursday morning. 14 of them. My sister first, then my mother, then my sister again. No texts. Just ringing, insistent, out of rhythm with how they usually reached me, which was sparingly, strategically. I didn't listen to the voicemails right away. I made coffee. I sat on the edge of the couch and waited for my body to tell me what to do. What it told me, quietly, was, "You're not in trouble. Something else is." I already knew what it was. Or rather, I knew where it had started. 3 months earlier, my mother had asked me, told me, really, to help manage some paperwork related to my father's estate. He'd died years ago, but the loose ends never seemed to resolve themselves without friction. I was good at this stuff, she said, responsible. That word had followed me my whole life like a leash. I agreed, but with conditions. I documented everything. I communicated through email. I asked questions I'd learned not to ask out loud. When the answers didn't come, I escalated them, not emotionally, just procedurally. Eventually, the attorney suggested a formal change, remove me as the intermediary and appoint an external administrator. Cleaner, he said. For everyone. I forwarded the recommendation. I waited. No response. So I signed the withdrawal form. It required a notary and 2 business days processing. I remember thinking, as I handed it over, that I was doing something irreversible. Not dramatic, just final in a way that paperwork often is. The confirmation email arrived the morning after I left the house. I hadn't mentioned it. Not out of spite, it just didn't feel like my job anymore. Now, on Thursday, my phone vibrated again. I let it ring out. Then, finally, I listened. My sister sounded breathless. Angry, but not at me, not exactly. "They won't talk to us," she said. "The bank says it has to go through the administrator. Mom's account is frozen." What did you do? My mother's message was shorter. "We need to fix this. Call me." No apology. No acknowledgement of what she'd said days earlier. Just urgency, naked and unfiltered. An hour later, an email arrived from the attorney's office, copied to all of us. It was clinical and unmistakable. From this point forward, all inquiries would be handled through their office. Any attempts to bypass the process would be declined. Boundaries, rendered in bullet points. That was the moment. Not the calls, not the messages, but the authority stepping in, visible and indifferent to family dynamics. A line drawn by someone who didn't know us and didn't need to. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief exactly, more like the absence of a constant pressure I'd mistaken for normal. I typed a reply to my sister. Deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. What I sent, eventually, was brief. I'm no longer involved. You'll need to speak with the administrator. Nothing else. The calls stopped after that, not immediately, but decisively, like someone turning off a faucet they'd finally realized was empty. That evening, I walked farther than usual. The city looked the same, but I noticed details I hadn't before: a shop closing early, a couple arguing in low voices, a man carefully tying a plant to a stake so it would grow straight. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. And sad in a clean way, without the usual undertow of guilt. I knew what this would mean. There would be a new story told about me. Cold. Unhelpful. Disappearing when needed most. That story had already been drafted long before I left. What surprised me was how little I wanted to correct it. Back on the couch, I silenced my phone, not forever, just for the night. I lay there in the quiet, thinking about the version of myself who would have rushed back, hands raised, trying to fix things that broke me in the process. I didn't hate her. I understood her. She had done what she thought was required. But she wasn't the one making decisions anymore. I fell asleep without setting an alarm. The world once again didn't object.